3 weeks ago, we released the beta version of Wirecast 11, and I'm proud to say that Wirecast 11 is almost here. It's very close to release, so I thought this would be a good episode to dive into the new features in Wirecast 11. You'll be hearing a lot more about them over the next few weeks, but this is going to be the first sort of deep dive into the beta. If you haven't had a chance to check it out already, we're going to cover it in depth. Wirecast 11, the October 2018 release of Wirecast, all the latest and greatest features. You're watching Wirecast Live. Hope you like that new studio cam sort of pre-feed that we're doing. It should be fun. We'll try to keep that running. And yeah, we'll see you after the credits. Stick around if you want to find out what's going on in the latest version of Wirecast this fall. Welcome to another episode of Wirecast Live. I'm your host, Andrew Haley, and I'm so glad you're joining us, whether you're watching right now live at 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time, when we broadcast to Facebook, YouTube, and occasionally other social media platforms, or if you're watching on demand later on YouTube or our Facebook channels. This is the place to come. Every week we stream and we try to bring you the latest tips, tricks, and information and guests in the live broadcasting, live video, and live production space. Wirecast is the software we make here, and we're very proud of it, and there's much that it can do, and there's much that it can't do, so we try to bring on people that know things that we don't know. So check out our guest list or sign up for our email list so you can get notified of upcoming episodes and what topics we'll be covering on the show each week. You can go to telestream.net/Wirecast Live and sign up. We won't spam you. We'll just let you know what the upcoming guests and topics are. Once in a while, we might send you a very cool something special just for signing up. But yeah, it's not really anything other than just a show sign-up list for our topics and guests. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and feel free. You'll know whenever we upload a new video. In fact, I just uploaded a new video to our YouTube channel yesterday, all about how you can increase the production value of your live streams on BeLive using Wirecast. So we'll talk about that a little bit today, and if you want to check out the video, go over to the YouTube channel at Wirecast on YouTube, and you can check out that video as well as many more and past episodes if you've missed those. I'm going to pull up your comments and see who's joining us, and just want to give some quick shout outs to folks who are in the house. Hey Kit, welcome. Are we there yet? Is another question. I like that image you posted there in the Facebook chat. Let me pull up the YouTube one as well. And let's see who's joining us on YouTube. You know, some of you viewers do like to join on both platforms. Tell me, maybe leave that in the comment where you're joining from, whether you're on both YouTube and the Facebook chats. I'll try to keep an eye. Lutz, looks like you are here in the house as well. And we have Silvio from Italy. Good to see you again, Silvio. Mark, hey, what's going on? We're going to jump into it. Don't worry, you'll get all the details. Astronomy live stream, 10 and 11. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. We also have Angelia Jones. Welcome. And Mork. What a great name, Mork. Hey, how's it going? Yashin and Carmack. And we have Epic Radio Show and Royal Promo. Hey, guys. Welcome. Thanks for watching. Okay. So, by the way, just want to give you a quick announcement. Next week's show, if you're curious, is going to be with Tom White, the sports editor from School Video News. We're going to be talking about the sort of fall sports broadcasting season, what you need to know, particularly if you're streaming sports in the high school or the club space. He's an expert at that, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the equipment that he likes, some of the workflows he recommends if you're out there in the field streaming for sports. There's been a lot of sort of more and more portability coming into the live streaming space, so there's a lot that you can do, and we'll get into that on next week's show. All right, without further ado, I will keep an eye on the chat, and I'll try to answer questions as they come up or as after we finish a particular feature or talk about it. But let's dive into it and discuss the Wirecast 11 beta. So there's a bunch of features that this new version of Wirecast brings. Let me take a sip of my tea to get started here. So the first thing you want to know, that's kind of a big new feature, and all this you can find if you just type in Wirecast 11 beta. It's in the beta notes, so I'm just going to go through that in order. We'll talk about each feature a little bit. I'll answer some questions if you're curious. So the first feature that is sort of a big deal, it may not seem like a big deal, but it was a big rewrite. It's a much better implementation. It's needed it for some time, is we've rewritten the web stream plugin. So if you are in the pro version of Wirecast, that allows you to bring in web or IP-based video sources. This could be something from an RTMP stream, an HLS stream. Actually, that's new. Now that we've rewritten this, you can bring in HLS streams, RTSP, any of those sort of internet protocol video formats or sort of types of video feeds. You can bring into the pro version of Wirecast. It's a pro feature because it really requires a little more technical expertise, and you need cameras that are remote, not necessarily in the room with you or connected to your computer through a capture card or through HDMI. So if we just launch this, I'll just show you pretty quickly here. We're going to go into the network sources, and you can see right here under the network sources, you can add new web stream. And that's just going to pop up a black sort of empty box that's related to, waiting for basically a connection to a feed. You'll notice over here in the properties panel on the left side of the interface, not a lot looks like it's changed here, but the whole thing's been rewritten to be more stable. So if you cannot connect to a camera, there's much less chance of the application freezing or crashing on you. It's a little more tolerant in terms of how it can accept our URIs, and there are more types of sort of formats you can accept, like HLS streams, which wasn't possible before. So you also have the audio and video delay options there if you need to bring that in, as well as a buffering, which wasn't available before, and reconnect options. So there's a lot that you can go. Once you've connected, the status will update and you should be good to go. So really a really cool sort of rewrite, but not necessarily a flashy headline feature, but I think it'll be really useful for you pro users out there who want more resilience with your IP connected or IP type video streams. One other thing I should mention is that it also has MPEG dash. So if you have an MPEG dash formatted stream or you're trying to connect to that, then it's also accepted that format, which it couldn't do previously to this. And it also has, as mentioned in the notes here, a latency for network devices, so configurable latency. So that's the buffer that we're talking about here. Okay, any questions about the IP video camera sources? Let me jump back to my other tabs here and make sure that I'm getting your questions as you're bringing them up. Let's do this here. Okay. I'm going to put my tab just on the right there so I can see it. Let's see. Hey, everyone. Deb, welcome. Lay, thanks for joining. Epic Radio Show. You can either stream by inputting RTMPS into Wirecast or setting... Okay, looks like you're answering a question there in the chat. Doesn't look like any questions about the web stream plugin. So if you're curious about that, one other minor thing that you'll probably want to check out, this is very cool. I think it will reduce confusion. There were two types of sources. There was the web stream plugin, which is again for IP streams, video streams coming in over the network or over the internet or from IP cameras. Different necessarily from like NDI, which can come from IP cameras, but and is an IP video stream, but is just more of an auto discovery. This you have to actually enter the IP address or the URL of the camera. The other thing, we used to call this the web source, but now we're calling it web page. So it's a little easier for you to understand. I think that'll lead to some reduced confusion. And you can see here that there is an automatic web page browser that you can pull up to actually display live web pages in Wirecast. This is really handy if you want to have a sort of like an updating web page source or widget in the background. You want to do a GIF, you want to go tour a web page. You can do screen capture, of course, but this is great for any of those automatic pages you need to refresh themselves or sources that may be web-based that are not video-based. They are HTML or based. You can actually see our customer service in the background is asking if we want to chat. That's actually interesting. I wonder, now that we put a chat on the main page of Telestream, if that's if it's such a good idea to have the default page be the Telestream Wirecast page. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. Leave your thoughts in the chat if you think there's another homepage that we should maybe program as the default URL address for the web page source inside Wirecast. Okay, so and just a note for those web page sources. Although they will display and you can set the dimensions and all that, you at this time cannot draw the you cannot like scroll and click on things. This is sort of like a display based only source at the moment. One thing that we have talked about is being able to give you scrolling and many of the web based interactivity options that you get with a normal web browser. So just keep that in mind. But all the control over here is on the left for the web page source. You also can override with CSS commands if you know those, if you know style sheets. You can set colors and fonts and sort of, so if you have a data source that you want to display via this method, you can enter these and kind of format them to make them look the way you want in your show or in your Wirecast broadcast. All right, so let's delete that source, and we're going to move on to the next feature, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on elsewise. Jeff says auto chats. He's not. Oh, you're not a fan of auto chats? Okay, good to know. And we'll pass that along. And then we also say, looks like we have Sylvia working on login with and camera password access. Working with login and camera password camera access. So yeah, that again, back to the WebStream plugin source. Over here in the left, you should have total, if your camera stream is locked or your IP video stream requires credentials, you would fill those out in the username and password prior to connecting or hitting apply. So just enter your username, and your password, and that will, when the Wirecast tries to connect to the IP or the web stream source, then they'll negotiate and it'll ask for those credentials. Of course, make sure you enter them correctly, otherwise you'll get rejected. All right, so let's move on to our next feature for the beta. Okay, this one is a lot flashier. It's very cool. So let's just check this out. This is one that I'm really excited to tour for you guys. So here we have a camera, and we have in my preview, and let's just pull this up. I'm going to actually put myself in the output here. And then let's say I want to jump to this, which is my sort of webcam, my Logitech webcam. Okay, so that's, say, the camera 2 that we want to jump to. Now watch this. We're going to hit this transition. Boom. Did you see it? Did you miss it? Let's go back to the other one. Boom. Right? Let's say I want to make it balloons. Let's do a balloon transition. So I'm going to go to up here to my media. I'm sort of teasing you guys with this feature. We'll talk about it in just a second, but I bet you can figure this out. We're going to go up here. We're going to click on Manage Stinger Transitions. We're going to click the plus button in the manager, jump into my little flotility pack, click the file that says balloons. It's going to pop up this little timeline map here. And now that I scroll through the timeline bar, you'll see these balloons floating by the screen. And then right when they take up the full screen, just a little bit one way or the other, looks like there's not a perfect frame. We're going to click this A-B button, and this blue bar is going to extend and jump to there. And here we see the beige going this direction. And we're going to hit close. And now I can jump into my transition and select balloons. And let's do it. We've got this camera on the left. That's what we want to transition to. This is what's currently live. Click the go button or the transition button. Balloons float up. The camera has switched. What am I doing? I am doing what's called a stinger transition. So this is something that we've really been excited to implement into Wirecast. It's now here with 11, and you'll notice that not only can you add your own custom video transitions, you can manage them and tell Wirecast exactly when it's supposed to cut. So let's talk about this in a little more detail and dive in on exactly how it works. So the first thing you need is you need a video file that has an alpha channel or an alpha transparency layer in it. So that is not just like an MP4 file. That is not just a that's not just like a compressed video MOV file. It needs to have, you need to make sure that you've checked that it has transparency or an alpha layer inside the video file. So when we launch Wirecast 11, we may actually be able to make some of these transitions available. I'll talk with the product team and see if that's something we can do for you guys. But you can certainly make your own, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's really easy as long as you have a video editor, sort of a standard video editor. And I'm going to show you in ScreenFlow because that's the one we have and the one we make. But it couldn't be simpler. So once you have the video file with an alpha transparency. So here's one. It's basically one where most of the scene might be see-through, and then something sort of animates itself onto the screen and then takes up the full screen, and then it goes away. And once it's sort of animated itself away, you'll then see the layer underneath it all. So any of these have alpha sort of transparencies. You can tell because they've got these sort of this gray sort of background, and you're actually seeing my window here in the background. If I make this smaller, you'll see the gray right here, this white window area. And you can even see the purple starbursts and clouds. So this is sort of Mac OS telling me that this is a transparent area of this file. Okay, so this door one, we could really use any of these. Once you can buy these. They're available in stock media libraries. They're available in the online. Again, you can animate or create your own. Once you have the file that you want to create the stinger or use for your stinger transition, you basically go through the steps I just did really fast. First, you need to load it into Wirecast. And you do that by going to your switch menu and you manage your transitions, your stinger transitions. So you open the stinger transition manager. You'll see previous ones you've added, like the balloons and the barn door, and then you can create a new one. You add a new one. So we're going to say take this comic POW transition, which is great. I'm going to open that. And it's now loaded in here. And what you're seeing is a timeline of the video file. And you are actually going to, as you scroll through it, you're going to see the point at which Wirecast is going to switch from the A source, which would be camera 1, or whatever you're putting this transition over, to camera 2. And let me move myself out of the way so it's a little less confusing there. Oh, no. Maybe Deborah, you might want to take me out. And I'm so close on, there's two of me. So then you're going to want to take this transition, basically tell Wirecast, where should I cut, right? So we have this one's nice because it gives you a lot of leeway as to where you could cut the camera. Literally anywhere within this animation taking up the full screen is acceptable. So, I could just leave it where it is. But if you need to move it or adjust it around, you just move the sort of playhead or scrubber to where you want it, click the A/B button, and Wirecast will adjust. If you click in the wrong spot, now it's going to cut A right here, and you're going to see, oh, A is still there. Now it's going to cut. The stinger transition doesn't work if you're revealing the cut at the same time, because that's when you would see camera 1 cut to camera 2. The whole point of a stinger is to sort of distract the audience or have a fun way to move from one scene or camera shot to another camera shot. So if you don't hide the cut with the layer on top, the stinger, then you've sort of defeated the purpose. Okay, so we're going to bring that in. I've selected it. Now, once it's added, this is the cool part, it actually adds itself onto the transition, your standard transition list, as if it was a normal transition. And what's great about this is you can name the files whatever you want. So you call it barn door stinger, balloons stinger, you could call it after a sequence, like word of the week, or if you do certain segments on your show, you may want to just name the file after that. So Wirecast will pull the name of the file, the MOV file that you grabbed, and bring that in here. So here's the comic POW, and again, we'll pull that up, hit the go button, and there it is. Okay, so really easy to use, and really fun as well, and I recommend you take advantage of it with this new version in Wirecast. So I did mention I would show you how to create these really fast. So let's create one from scratch, a brand new Stinger transition that's never existed before. So I'm going to open ScreenFlow, and I'm going to just make sure that the pad's still on. And in ScreenFlow, I'm going to create a brand new document. So this, again, you could do this in any editor that you can have, or you're familiar with. So we'll create a new one. I'm going to make it 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second. That's just a general good rule of thumb for your transition size, project size. And now I'm just going to grab a media file. I'm going to go into my demo files. I think I have the Wirecast logo. So I do a Wirecast show. I'm going to do a Wirecast Stinger transition. I'm going to drag this down to my timeline. All right, and what I'm going to do is make this, Stinger transitions don't need to be long, anywhere from 2 to, 5 seconds is going to be more than enough, and I think we probably won't go that far either. And what I'm going to do is basically start this file. I'm going to scale it down, and I'm going to create a video action, basically going to animate making this larger. So I'm going to start with it really small, or basically almost invisible, and then I'm going to grow it and I need to grow it even a little larger. So let's reset that to the center. Okay, so I'm going to grow it to the point at which it takes up the full screen, and then I'm going to shrink it again. So basically this is how I'm going to hide the thing. So let's actually change my curve type. I probably want ease in, ease out. Let's just watch that real fast. That's a little fast, right? Probably want to slow that down a little. Perfect. And then we want to hold for a second, and we actually want to reverse that action. ScreenFlow has a really cool thing where you can actually do a snapback, or basically a reverse, exactly what you just did. Hold on. Let's move forward a little bit. Snapback. All right, there we go. And I probably want to, again, make that a little bit larger. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, so we'll basically watch that, ease in, and I can hold that a little bit longer. Let's try it again. Ease in, ease out. Okay, so there you go. I've created the action. I can actually hold that maybe, I wouldn't actually want to hold it too long, right? Perfect. Okay, so now I've created my file. Now or my animation. The only thing I need to do now is just output it as a movie file with an alpha channel. So this black area, any part that's not taken up by the logo, will be considered transparent by any video players that take it, including ScreenFlow, Wirecast, I mean. So we're going to go to export. We're going to export the file, and I'm going to call it Wirecast Stinger, and we're going to jump over to the manual, and here you can see right in Wirecast I choose lossless ProRes with alpha. This does mean that it is a very large file, so just be aware. That's why Stinger transitions with transparency need to be relatively short, because even this tiny little file is going to take up 437 megs. I could probably shorten that, make it a little smaller by making the video clip a little tinier, because I'm not using all of it. This should be fine. So what we're going to do is jump back into Wirecast, and I'm going to import this Stinger just like we did before. Go up to the switch menu, go to Manage Stinger Transitions, click the Add button, and on the desktop we should see our Wirecast Stinger. Open it, And again, we'll see, whoop, there comes the Wirecast logo. Takes up the full screen. I can cut it anywhere here. I'm going to click the AB button, and we are good. And you can also check or uncheck this box, keep all video frames in memory. This is just a something to be aware of. How much memory does your computer have? You may not want to have this checked if you feel like you're running low on memory. Again, these files are very large, so that may not be something you want happening on your computer, may affect performance. Okay, so now we can use our brand new transition that we just created. Make sure you select it from the transition panel, and we're going to run it. Boom. So there you go. Cool custom transition made from scratch using ScreenFlow. I encourage you to use all of ScreenFlow's tools if you own it to make your own cool stingers. There's so many animations and cool video actions you can do, so you can easily create really creative, really neat stinger transitions. All right, let's check in on you guys, see how you're doing, and give me a thumbs up or like if you are, if this is something you're digging, if you're into it. If there's something I'm not showing or you want to see more of, let me know. Otherwise, I'll keep moving down the list here. Correct. Wirecast 11 is not live yet. This is the beta that I'm showing you. It's actually a version a little bit later than the beta, but I can promise you that Wirecast will be live. Wirecast 11 will be live soon, and we are getting ready for it. So anytime you see us launch a beta, you know that we're getting close to a release. So just get ready for it. It'll drop whenever the product is ready to ship. But the other thing, if you're a Mac user, this is the fully compatible version with Mac OS Mojave. So if you've updated or you want to update your Mac operating system, Wirecast 11 is the version you should have for the full sort of peace of mind compatibility with the latest operating system. All right, Deb gives it like a pound it. All right, thank you. I like that more than the thumbs up. Digging the stingers transition. Why is ScreenFlow not available for Windows yet? Great question. I think we've been asked that question every year since I've been at Telestream. I think it just comes down to, at this point, if we were to release on Windows for ScreenFlow, we would have to start over from zero, from scratch. And I think the version 1 of ScreenFlow for Windows might be, so far behind the version for Mac that it might be frustrating for people, because it would take a while for the developers to catch up to the features. So it could be several years, and it just may not be worth the sort of time and investment based on how many people are actually looking for that. I don't know. It's a question. If you have a strong argument of why we're going to make $10 million on Windows, maybe you should send us an email and we'll maybe reconsider ScreenFlow for Windows. But at this time, no plans for ScreenFlow for Windows. Okay, so here we go. Let's move on to our next feature. And this is cool. This is sort of an oldie but a goodie. We've brought it back. The build-in, build-out transitions for smooth transitions. So the smooth transition, if you use Wirecast, this is really one of the two main transitions used in Wirecast most often. So cut and smooth. Smooth is not a true dissolve. It's actually kind of like an animation. Almost does little animated things and brings things on and off the screen. If it doesn't have any animation sort of actions, it'll act like a cross dissolve. So it's a bit of a versatile, cool transition. And with Wirecast 10, I believe, or recently, it wasn't 10, maybe it was 8, we did a sort of an overhaul of the smooth transition, and we gave you a bunch of cool new curve types for smooth. So you can smoothly bring things in or out. You can even spring them on or off the screen. So there's a lot of control up here in the switch menu over the smooth transition and what exactly it does when it brings something on or off the screen, or even just moves it around the screen. So let's give you an example here. So I have here just this basic lower third title of just my name and title. And if I bring it on with the smooth transition onto the screen, it just fades in, right? So that's awesome, no big deal. But if I want to, say, have this slide in and slide out, then smoothly, then I would use the smooth transition properties up here. The build-in, what used to be called build-in, build-out, is now called the smooth transition properties. Basically the same thing. You're familiar with this if you've used Wirecast 7 or earlier. So this is basically how this works. So what you're going to do is you want to come in and first select all the elements that you want to transition on the screen. This title has several elements. It has my name, has my my title, and then it has the background image that we designed in Photoshop. Select all of these and then jump back to the build-in, build-out properties tab, and I'll make that a little larger so you can see. And what you do is you select for your build-in and your build-out where you want it to come from and what you want it to do when it's doing that. By default, it's fade in and fade out, which is why you saw it fade in and fade off the screen. You also saw it from the middle, so it was basically faded in and faded out from the middle. Let's select a different location. Let's make it come from the bottom left of the screen. So let's go down and find bottom left. And then I also want it to go back to the bottom left when it goes out again. All right, it's on the left side of the screen. Let's make it sort of come from that direction. And let's see what that looks like. I haven't changed anything else. We're going to keep the fade on and the fade off. So now if I take it off the screen, it should fade out as it moves left. There you go. So it's sort of faded on, faded off. Let's bring it back on. And they all kind of come on and drag on, drag off. Now we can also do some stuff where we could sort of have it spinning. So let's check the spin box. Now it spins on and spins off. Right? Pretty neat. So the final thing we could do is we could actually have it scale. So it can scale on and fade and spin all at the same time. So now it's sort of fading, scaling large, and doing that. So depending on what combinations of boxes you check, if you don't want it to do any fading or spinning and you just want the scale piece, then it might look like this. Okay, so that's one element. And I noticed that one of the text boxes is sort of animating a little slower or differently at a different rate than the others. That could be because of the curve type I've selected, or it could be because they're basically animating against different reference points. You know, this full screen title or this image is a little bit larger and it may have a different sort of center point. So when Wirecast is calculating, it's not calculating these as one sort of solid element. So if you need things to come in and on or off at the same time with a smooth transition, it's not doing that, then just go to your Photoshop editor and flatten those into a single layer so Wirecast can treat it all at the same time. So here's another one that I've got, this Andrew Product Evangelist, a different title card using the sort of built-in Twitter title card. So let's do a cool sort of from the bottom. We can have this one top up from the go down to the bottom. So select to the bottom. And again, we want to probably have it come from the bottom as well. I did that mistake where I only selected one element, so just make sure you grab all of them. So let's jump back to the smooth. If there's a discrepancy, you'll notice that it didn't even tell. It's like doesn't have one selected because I've got multiple elements selected here. So we're going to do again from bottom to bottom, and we can do a quick. You can also, by the way, apply this to everything if you want these behaviors to be for all of your build-ins and smooths. Just be careful of that because it'll probably also apply to all your cameras and everything else for the smooth transition, which you may not want. You can also set this as the default, so anytime you kind of add a new one, then this becomes your sort of default smooth transition. So here we go. We're going to animate this one on or off. First I'm going to take that one off. All right, so we've got nothing on the screen. This one should pop up from the bottom, which it did a good job of that. And we're going to take it off. Boom. So it's also the sort of transition speed. I did mention that there are some other options here in the switch smooth transition properties. So you've got this linear, you've got ease in, ease out. Let's see what spring looks like. This is actually really fun. So let's animate it on using spring. Spring is basically what it sounds like to make it really bouncy as it comes on or off. Boing, 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 right? And you can do the same thing when it goes off. Less bounce because it's disappeared. You'll probably see the spring more often when it's coming on. You also notice that it's fading at the same time. You may or may not want the fade, right? So if you have nothing selected, you're not required to select any of these properties. Then it'll be a hard sort of cut on and off. See, right? So there's no fading as it goes. One more time. Pretty cool. The other thing you can do is you can speed up or slow down, right? So if we make this super slow with the, actually I probably want to make it really fast because we're about to go out, and then we'll make it slow when it comes in so you can really get the advantage here. So let's take it out, and then let's bring it on, but with the really slow transition speed. So here we go. Boing, boing, boing. So when you choose the slowest transition speed, these animations and these build-in, build-outs can take a very long time. And if you made a mistake and you accidentally cut to a different source, the Wirecast isn't going to finish that transition before it brings on the next source. So you may get some funniness. So watch this as I take this one off and cut with a new one on. So then we'll bring this one on. See, you got a little flash of the last one. It was because the animation wasn't yet completed for the build out. Same here. If we grab this, then I cut back. You know, you're gonna get some funniness. It can actually be kind of cool, but just be aware that if you're seeing multiple things on the screen at the same time, Spring is also interesting because it's going to animate physics properties, and things may go off the screen and then bounce or spring back on for a little bit before they get themselves off. They'll get out eventually, but there is some sort of variable there with sort of the amount that they spring on or off. So you can see this one, even when it sprang off, it was still sort of hovering down in the corner there. So just be aware of that. If you are using Spring, things may come back on the screen. I don't necessarily recommend Spring for any outgoing. It's great for incoming. It may not be great for outgoing transitions. Okay, let's switch back to our speed. The other thing you can do real fast, you can try these different curve types, ease in, ease out. I can show you what those look like if you want. It's basically just slow in and slow out. Ease out is also a good one let's go here. We're going to go to the build in, build out. Sorry, Deverly, you're in my ear. I can hear you. So here we go. We're going to grab this a normal speed, and we're going to go back and select the ease in, probably because I don't know, ease out. If you do both, you get this sort of like slow in, and then it speeds up, and then it slows again. So you may want that, but in general, I like things to sort of ramp up and then slow down. So I think the ease out is probably my preferred one of those. So let's just cut this one off, and then let's bring this back in. There you go. You got that kind of nice, smooth sort of slow down at the end there as it came in. So that is the new build-in, build-out properties. You have all the directions. So when you choose from top, bottom, left, however you want things to build in or out, just think of them as the corners, right? So that you sort of have an arrow. It used to be that you saw all the arrows. You would see from top left, top right, bottom left, middle, is kind of how you do that. So just think of it as it's going to build in the direction of one of those corners or one of those sides of the frame. All right, so that was the smooth transition properties in and out. I hope that was useful for you guys. That's a great new feature you can take advantage of to bring on particularly lower thirds. It's great with graphics, logos. A guy who was on our show some time ago, Brian, did the photo show. He was great. He would animate all his titles on and off his show using the build-in, build-outs. And we've got a lot of requests from other users like that really wanted to have more control over that and bring that control back. So we're glad to bring it back here in Wirecast 11. Okay, and hopefully, now that combined with all the new properties you can sort of control within the smooth transition, you've got a lot of control and creative opportunities. Okay, so there's other things we talked about. I could talk about the virtual camera in a second, but I actually want to skip ahead a little bit, and I want to talk about the MacBook Pro Touch Bar. So this is pretty cool. We have a lot of Wirecast users use Wirecast on their MacBook Pro laptops. So this doesn't apply to everybody if you have Windows or a desktop computer, but if you are on a MacBook and one of the newer MacBooks where you've got that cool little touch bar at the top, let me just show you what this looks like really fast. It's pretty neat. So a lot of applications, basically Apple made it so that programmers can take advantage of that little app up there, that little bar, and they can you can program whatever buttons you want on there. It's almost like it's a touch screen with, you can make your own buttons. So I'm going to pull up QuickTime Player here, and I want to see if I can grab a new movie recording. And I'm just going to bring on, hopefully, my Blackmagic production camera. Here we go. So you can see, I'm going to take this full screen. So you can see I've got the MacBook Pro here. And I'm going to, you may want, I don't know, take me off screen here, Deverly. But I have Wirecast open. And let me sort of here's the touch bar. I'm going to make this brighter. Okay, so you can kind of see I have these sort of shots here in the corners. I've got sort of photos. Actually, I think I just grabbed my sort of bio shot folder of photos, just whatever happened to pop up. And so you can see I've got layers sort of up here, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Now up here at the top, you can see here's sort of my standard. All of this is now Wirecast related. Wirecast related buttons. So I've got my go button. So if I want to transition, I can transition. It's basically my take live button. I've got my audio mute and monitor still. So that's good. I think that's actually the system, not necessarily Wirecast. So Wirecast kind of ends here. Here's where the Apple stuff begins. And then over here, I've got my layer selection. So I can select which layer I want, and then it tells me the names of all the layers, and it even gives me a red telling me that clear layer is the current live shot. So now it's giving me green next to Andrew. Hit return, and now I've took it live, or I could actually use the live button. Let's take this one live. Now the red button's next to that one. So I'm actually now I can jump down to layer 2. I can tap, this one, take it live. And all this is sort of happening here on the screen above, which you can't see. I'm just showing you this angle here. But pretty cool. I haven't played with this until I was setting this up for the demo today. And I think that it is really neat. So if you have this little laptop, this is one of those cool little extra features that you get to take advantage of in Wirecast 11. Okay, Deborah, I think we're good on that demo. Any questions about that, let me know. But take advantage of it. It's pretty sweet, and I do that. What effect does high CPU have on an Apple computer? That's a good question. Apple computers, by design, tend to be throttled, thermo-throttled. So because they do such tight, small chassis, and they pack all these components in, they don't let you open them. You can't add extra cooling. What they do is they kind of compensate for that by slowing the clock speeds. The operating system will actually slow down these processors and these chips so they don't go overheat. Whereas the same chips in, say, a PC may be able to continue to operate at fast or faster speeds continuously because your cooling system is better. So when you have a sort of a thin little laptop like this, it's really cool, it's really portable, but it's not optimized for heat distribution. You could take this same architecture and put it in a different chassis and probably get much better performance out of it if you had a sort of a more open or added more cooling components. So the cost of this sort of design that Apple brings to the table with their iMacs, their MacBook Pros, their Mac Pros, is that they often sacrifice sort of functionality, a certain level of functionality for design and aesthetics. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. Just be aware of that. In general, they perform just fine for the most part, but they can. You will notice that if the CPU is getting really high, the Apple OS will kind of pull that back a little, and your computer may not perform as well because it's going to prioritize not burning up and heating up too much over the performance of your applications and your software. All right, let's jump back to. Actually, I was thinking that that was your camera shot. But it's actually my camera shot. I was throwing it up on my desktop here. Okay, so that is the MacBook Pro feature with the new Touch Bar in Wirecast 11. Pretty sweet. That's Apple. There you go, right? Beauty sometimes over functionality, or maybe not perfect. Like, you know, and I think that's why they've been successful. They're really cool. They look awesome. They're designed to a T. But there are compromises you have to make when you make things that thin and that tiny, and you still want to make them powerful. All right, so let's get into the final sort of thing I'm going to talk about today, and I think we'll call it after this one. So in addition to making Wirecast more efficient, CPU efficient, we've done a ton of improvements on the CPU rendering. There's actually performance improvements on this Mac OS, so around the drop shadow. You can find the notes in that. All that will be in the release notes, and it's already pretty well detailed on the beta post, so you can read a little bit more about that. We've just kind of done lots of sort of under the hood stuff, so pretty cool when it comes to that. You'll also find the latest NDI compatibility in there. They just dropped, I think, NDI 3.7 or 3.8, somewhere around there. So the newest version of NDI is totally compatible with Wirecast 11, and you shouldn't have any issues, and you can take advantage of all the new performance enhancements and improvements that they've made with that protocol if you're starting to use a lot of NDI. And we've also done some improvements to the virtual camera. So this is one of those things I didn't quite have time to test prior to our demo today. So we'll have fun on this together. I'm going to launch Wirecast, and I'm going to turn on the virtual camera. So let's just grab one of these moving backgrounds. This is just a video file, and I superimposed it and lowered the opacity on the Wirecast logo, right? So pretty sweet, and it looks good. And we're going to output it using the virtual camera. We improved the virtual camera functionality. They say that this should improve performance with sandboxed apps. What does that mean? Sandboxed apps it's a really classic design that Apple implements. I think Windows does it to a certain extent, but Apple's kind of the one that's known for it, where apps don't share data on the operating system much. Like they're not really supposed to or allowed to. So this made it really tough to get the virtual camera, which is really just a sort of fake digital virtual camera of your Wirecast output in shared memory into other apps. They just, particularly the Mac, I mean, you could get into Skype, you could get into Chrome, you could get into a lot of other applications, but there was a point when it worked with FaceTime, and then it stopped because Apple sort of tightened their security restrictions. So I'm not even sure. Let's see if we have FaceTime on this computer. Okay, it's there. Let's pull it up and see what we can do here. There was a time when I could not, when Wirecast did work, the virtual camera worked with FaceTime. And there it is. That's really cool. So before, I couldn't choose Wirecast virtual camera, and it wouldn't work with FaceTime. But at least according to this menu, it's saying that it can select it as the system. And looks like that's the audio output. And I'm not seeing any other... no video. FaceTime. So maybe it's not working. It's seeing it on the list, but it's saying it can't see it. So I wanted to test that to see if I could get it to work. Okay, so we've got the Black Magic sort of... What video was that? Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. Okay, so that's that camera. Or is it that one? It's this one. So this is my Logitech. That's funny. It's calling this the Blackmagic Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. I think it's super confused as to what cameras are what right now because it's not working. Let's try the Logitech. What does it think the Logitech is? Same as the Ultra Studio. All right. So something to play with, it looks like. When it comes to the Wirecast virtual camera, it's promising, but you will find that there's some other improvements that they've made with other applications. So it should be lower memory, and we also give you the option now to flip it horizontally. So for those of you who don't like to see or feel like you're plugging it into something that is mirroring it in a way you don't want it to mirror, under the virtual camera output, you can now flip it horizontally. So you have this option here to change the direction. Some apps flip it and show you the flipped version, but then just don't output that. Your guests see the normal version. Other times they may not do that correctly. So just be aware of that if you're outputting horizontally to some apps. Okay, that was it for our tour, our grand tour of Wirecast 11 and all the new features that are in it. Again, the beta's out now. We will drop the official public release soon as it's ready, but you'll be ready for it when it comes, and you'll be ready to update because you will have already seen everything that is sort of new in it and improved, and you'll be able to jump right in, and you won't be asking yourself, what are stinger transitions, and what's this new build out, this new build-in, build-out transition, smooth transitions panel, and all the other questions that I'm sure keep you up at night about Wirecast. All right, guys. Thanks so much. I appreciate you all tuning in. I will see you next week when we'll be talking with Tom White, the sports editor from School Video News. We'll be talking all about fall sports, what you need to know. I know there's some of you out there that this is directly in your wheelhouse and what you like to do on your weekends and in your businesses. So check that out. I will see you guys same time next week. Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Terry, Dennis. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. I will see you guys soon. And it's been another episode of Wirecast Live. Thanks to our partners for helping us make this show. Thanks to you, our audience, for joining us and listening to me ramble for each week for an hour or so. Okay, we'll see you next time, and I'm looking forward to it. This has been Wirecast Live.